Hello, good morning, everyone. Please, can you confirm if you can hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. Good morning.
Okay, good morning. I just changed the device. I was speaking earlier, but it seems as if none of you can hear me then. This is when you can hear me, right?
Yes, we are just hearing you now. Yes.
Well, okay. Good morning, everyone, and thanks once again for joining the ICAN Amuwo and District Society monthly webinar, where we all share productive and technical savvy information and data, as well as improve our own technical skill through the various topics that we are bringing on to you. Thanks for your consistency in supporting the districts, and we all appreciate your support, your inputs, your encouragement through your monthly subscription. We won't be taking much of your time today as well. We only here for 2 hours. We understand it's a month end, as in there are lots of activities that are lined up for the weekend. And we just want to take 2 hours of our time, to improve our technical competence relating to our respective jobs. The webinar topic for this month is tax sustainability through cash flow management and money market investment. And we have 2 powerful speakers that we have lined up who are going to bless us with their technical expertise and equally improve our session. As we all know, the paid webinar for all the paid and registered attendees, you will get the recording, you will get the speakers slides. You equally have your 5 MCP credit hours credited to you, hopefully within the next 1 week. So as not to take much of our time, I will want to let me quickly just run through the agenda so at least we are clear on how we want to spend our time. The chairman will shortly declare the session open. After we'll go through the protocol of the anthems as well as the prayers. Thereafter, we'll have our opening address from the chairman, which will be followed by the first speaker, who will be giving us a topic that tagged cash flow management, a tool for business continuity. He will deliver that lecture for 30 minutes. Thereafter, we'll take the second speaker, who is going to, bless us with his exploring investment opportunities, the money market within Nigeria. After the second speaker, we are going to have the interactive question and answer session. So any of you that have questions relating to the first and second topics that we have brought to you today, just them down. We will be taking questions and answer after the second presentation. Thereafter, we'll have our vote of thanks from one of the ESCOs, and sort of some districts announcements, for future programs, as well as the meetings of the districts coming up. And thereafter, we'll bring the whole session to a close. We don't intend taking more than 2 hours. So how will we honorably be managing our time? And if there are further questions relating to any of the topics that extend beyond the allotted hours, we will take those questions and send them to the paper deliverer, who will eventually, come back with answers, and we would, make that available to you. So as we kickstart, let me yield the floor to the chairman to declare the session open.
Thank you so much, Mr. Michael Alatishe, FCA, our wonderful moderator. Can you see me and can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, thank you so much. Once again, good morning, sirs and ma'ams, professional colleagues. Thank you so much for being here. Without further ado, I hereby declare this session open. Thank you very much, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman, for that session. We will now commence with the necessary protocol. We are going to kickstart with the ICAN anthem, national anthem, which I'm going to play from here to us.
Mr. Latishe, we can't hear anything. Provincial is for my hand. I'm not sure. Thank you.
Oh, you can't hear anything. I'm playing it here. There has been some technical session there. 1 minute, let me see if I can switch to another device then.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Apologies, please, our participants. Thank you so much. While we're waiting for the moderator to switch, as you all know, protocol is very key in ICAN. So that's why we need to take these anthems. Okay, I can see screen now. Mr. Latish, over to you, sir. If you can hear me, we can't hear you. We can't hear anything, but at least we can read the words. So I'm sure we are singing it at our hands.
Can you also share the sound, sir?
Yeah, my apologies, ladies and gentlemen. I understand you didn't get the sound. That's one funny thing about the technical equipment one uses. These have been tested and tried. I just realized that it's I can hear from my end, but when I'm speaking to you, you can't hear it. Probably I need to rebuild the system, which is why you see me possibly switching. But I will rely on the fact that at least you hear me. At least you're able to see what we've played in here. Hopefully, before the end of the program, we will try to. We will try to correct the sound, and hopefully, we'll be able to hear you at the end of the program. So we'll now proceed to opening prayer. The standard opening prayer is the second stanza of our national anthem, which we will recite from here. O God of creation, direct our noble cause, guide our leaders' rights. Yeah, amen. So we will now listen to the welcome address from our district chairman, who has already declared the session open, but we need to hear from him as a sort of a precursor to bring in our first speaker. Over to you, Chairman.
Thank you so much, Mr. Michael Alatishi, FCA, our wonderful moderator. Can we all hear me and can we see me?
Yeah, Chairman, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. So once again, I'd like to say a big thank you to each and every one of us for taking out the time to join us on this August edition of our webinar. For our new members who are here, we are ICAN Amuwo District Society. We are the vanguard of integrity. And every last Saturday of the month, we usually gather together to share knowledge. And just like the moderator said earlier, for the benefit of those who are just joining us, my name is Olamide Balogun, FCA. I'm privileged to be the 11th chairman of ICAN Amuwo District Society. And this webinar is being powered by our beautiful technical committee, ably led by Alhaji Isiaka Balogun, ACA, with his wonderful team, doing a great job. I'll say a big thank you to them. Today, we'll be talking about sustainability through cash flow management and money market investments. And lined up are two amazing speakers who are going to dive into this topic and give us the wealth of their knowledge. I will advise we get our pen and our papers ready. I have mine with me here to take notes. Mr. Sulaiman Ishola, CFA ACA, he is the lead evaluation and modeling person at Deloitte Nigeria, and his talk will be on cash flow management, a tool for business continuity. While Mr. Wale Okunriboye, CFA, he is the Chief Investment Officer at Access Pensions. He will be talking about exploring investment opportunities in the money markets. Ladies and gentlemen, this resource people have been sourced carefully because we know we need this topic at this particular time. We all know what is going on in our country. So as accountants, we really need that sustainability through cash flow management. I won't talk too much. Our time is already fast spent. Like we said, we'll keep into our time, 10 a.m. to 12 noon. So I declare this session open once again, and happy listening, and we'll talk to you at the end of the program. Thank you so much. Over to you, Mr. Michael Atishe, FCA, our moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, Mr. Olamide Balogun, FCA, the 11th Chairman of the District Society. So while for that wonderful opening session, so I will now call on Mr. Sulaiman Ishola to get ready for his presentation. While he's preparing, the slides, I will briefly just introduce him. Mr. Sulaiman Ishola holds a degree in accounting from Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, first class honors. He's an associate member of the Institute and also is CFA charter holder. He works in the finance advisory practice of Deloitte Nigeria as a senior manager, where he leads valuation and modeling team within the financial advisory. He commenced his career with Don Lauren Merrifield Advisory Partners, Where he built up his technical competence in debt and equity capital raising exercise, mergers and acquisition, corporate finance engagement across different industries. He was seconded to an investment team of Active Africa Private Equity, where he was involved in portfolio monitoring, management, facilitated investment additional capital into a portfolio company. Thereafter, I think he joined the finance advisory team of Deloitte South Africa in 2020, where he worked on different South African based clients, South African countries, Malawi, Mozambique, Zimbabwe. He has advised several private equity firms, conglomerates, strategic financial investment on diverse transactions. His experience includes financial modeling, due diligence advisory, business valuation, merger and acquisition, buy and sell side advisory, among others. And is equally a regular facilitator with ICAN faculties and training programs. He will be delivering a topic on cash flow management, a tool for business continuity. Over to you, Mr. Solomon Ishola. You have 30 minutes to deliver your session.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Alatiche. Can you confirm that you can hear me and you can see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm sorry I might not be able to use the camera. I mean, I have a very bad bandwidth this morning, so I'm out of Lagos, so that's why. But let's try to manage what we have. Hopefully,
No
it
problem.
doesn't
Please
break
go
out.
ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting topic, and I'm always happy to join professional colleagues to discuss some of these interesting topics and all of this. So I'm glad to be with everyone. The topic is cash flow management as a tool for continuity, or I mean, depending on how you want to look at it. Cash flow is critical to any business. But before I go into the details of my presentation, I have this question, and I would like to ask people. I would like to ask the participants on the call to tell me. Maybe I'll pause for 30 seconds, and I'll just wait to see your points on the chat. I think there should be. We should be able to type on the chat box. Can you tell me why you think businesses fail? I mean, based on your experience and yeah, so I'm checking the chat. Can you drop some notes around why you think businesses fail? I'll wait for 1 minute and then I'll collate the responses. So tell us why you think businesses fail. Yeah. Consistent negative cash flows, lack of vision and leadership, inadequate financial knowledge, bad management, poor capital management, bad management, rising inflation, poor planning, okay, so let's insufficient capital, lack of internal control, poor planning, inexperienced management, bad investment decisions, loading of personal expenses by the owner, inadequate marketing expenses or marketing strategies. Okay, so no profit. I'll stop there, and then it would be interesting to tell you that there was a research that was carried out. I mean, and this is based on the analysis of 101 startup post-mortems. That's 101 startups after they failed. I think 42% of the respondents said it's because the business did not have any market need. So, and it's interesting that the second category of the reason why businesses fail is really because they ran out of cash. So, I mean, there are several others, but the top two is there's no marketing need, and they, I mean, some of them ran out of cash. And it's interesting to note that 70% of respondents put these two as the reason why businesses fail. So that then means the topic we are discussing is critical, especially if you are a finance manager, if you're an accountant of a business, because if you don't manage your cash flow properly, if you fail to monitor those cash flows, then the business you are running is about to fail. Okay, now, sorry, I think there was a, okay, so now, what's cash flow management? Is really the processes and everything that you do to ensure that you monitor the money that comes in and out of the business. Checking the cash receipt, the expenses, and you have to do this on a day-to-day basis. So, and it's becoming increasingly important because investors, shareholders, everybody is interested in it because at the end of the day, your cash flow underpins your valuation. It's really a trigger for your profitability and all of this. Now, in you monitoring your cash flows, you need to pay attention to the three categories of cash flows. As we all know, your cash flows can either be operating, it can be investing, and it can be financing. So each of these three types of cash flows, you have to monitor them properly because when you fail to do so, you then find yourself, instead of using operating cash flows to meet operating expenses, you're going out to go and raise financing to meet your operation. So you need to ensure that you're matching each cash outflow with the appropriate cash inflows. Yeah, so it's important for you to manage cash flows because you then do this to understand and predict what amounts will be available in the future, when will it be available, what are the expenses that you need to pay, who are the vendors that have strict credit payment terms that you need to settle quickly. And when you do this, then you have a complete picture of your costs, of your cash outflows versus revenue. I know practically, I've seen instances when, especially when a business is undergoing restructuring, so where you will have to appoint a person that you call a cash officer. So what you then do is you have a weekly cash flow analysis where you will have, I think it's typically 13 weeks. That's always the standard. You have a 13 weeks cash flow monitor and it keeps rolling so that at every point in time, you are aware that this is what you need to. And it's critical because just imagine that you run a manufacturing outfit and then you know there is a raw materials that, I mean, it's critical for you to produce, right? Now, you know that supplier, if you fail to pay, is not going to deliver. Now, imagine you find yourself in a cash flow problem where you're unable to give or to make payment to that supplier. Just imagine the implication on the business, because once you're unable, just that simple act of not paying that vendor means that you're shutting down your factory because it's not going to bring the raw materials that you need to produce, right? Your employees will be sitting down having nothing to do, right? And then the entire business collapse. So it's always critical to monitor your cash flows. Okay. Now, when you are monitoring cash flows, I mean, there's always this tendency, people ask questions. How do I see whether I'm having cash flow problem? What do I need to know? I mean, it's simple. I've seen instances where people say, "Oh, just check my bank account." While it's okay to check your bank account, but it's also okay to have some KPIs. So you need to understand the concept of operating cash flow, and you also need to understand the concept of free cash flow. I'm sure, I mean, considering the nature of the audience, we all know that profit is not cash flow, right? Profit is good, but remember that cash is king. So until you are able to identify the cash flow that is free, that is available for you to do anything and everything that you need to do for the business, then you are not okay. So for instance, you will see a business, especially for laymen, right? When they make revenue, they are happy, like, oh no, good, this is fantastic. I've made this X amount of money. But the important question is this cash flow available for distribution? Is this revenue available for distribution? And the answer is no. So, and that's why you need to understand the metrics for monitoring your cash flow. Usually there are two important cash flows that we'll look at. I mean, remember I've told you about the three types of cash flow based on the accounting standards and all of that we do. You know, operating cash flows is when you look at the cash flows that are available based on your operations. I mean, you buy, you sell, you remove the expenses, on a pure plain vanilla, nothing complex or out of place. Now, because when you start having a lot of free operating cash flows, I mean, after you've made your revenue, you've settled off your expenses, you've paid the government, now you realize that, look, you have excess cash flows, right? Then when you have excess cash flow, what do you do with it? Then you start thinking of moving to the second type of cash flow. You start thinking of investing, right? So investing, how do you invest? Do you want to reinvest back into your business? Is your business showing enough future? Is it promising for you to reinvest that operating cash flows back to the business? And you start thinking of, oh, should I do CAPEX? Should I buy some additional fixed assets? Or should I invest in another entity? Should I perhaps invest in maybe shares, or invest in stock, investing in bonds and all of that, right? So that's when you have excess operating cash flow. So when you have much more than you require, then you start thinking of investing, right? Now, if you don't have enough operating cash flows, or perhaps you're starting the business really, then you start thinking how you even intend to finance the operations in the first place. Then you start thinking, oh, how do I raise more money? Where do I source the money from? Do I need to raise some additional equity? Is this business going to promise investors a good return, or I don't need patient capital? Am I trying to take advantage of interest benefits? Should I go for bonds? So those are the conversations that needs to happen. But remember, beyond the operating cash flows, after you've sorted your operating cash flows and you realize that it is indeed positive, then the question is around the free cash flows. So because you need to ensure that you're doing it rightly when you are investing. You are not investing in the wrong way, right? And you're not financing with bad capital. So because at the end of the day, your stakeholders, your investors need to have enough cash flows that is available for distribution. So free cash flow is simply the cash flow of the business after you've made the necessary investment in CAPEX to maintain and grow the business. Now, there are different metrics that you use when you are measuring your cash flows, and all of them are what we have here. There is the cash conversion cycle. There's a cash flow yield. There's a cash flow per share. There is a cash flow margin. There's the cash flow return on capital, and there is debt to free cash flow. Now, before I go into each of these, I just want to quickly tell you about a quote by Jeff Bezos. So, I mean, just to ensure that we understand why cash flows is important. So, this is what he said. He said, percentage margins are not one of the things we are seeking to optimize. It's the absolute dollar free cash flow per share that you want to maximize. And if you cannot do that by lowering margins, we would do that. So if you take the free cash flows, that's something that investors can spend. investors can't spend percentage margins. So as finance professionals, as business leaders, as accountants, I mean, I know we worry a lot about margins. Oh, what's the gross profit margin? What's that? But remember, investors is not going to spend that. Investors is not going to declare margins as dividend. What they will declare as dividend is what? Is a cash. So I'll take the quote again. He said, and I quote, percentage margins are not one of the things we are seeking to optimize. It is the absolute dollar-free cash flow per share that you want to maximize. And if you can do that by lowering margins, we will do that. So if you take the free cash flow, so if you could take the free cash flow, that's something that investors can spend. Investors can't spend percentage margins. So that's really trying to tell you that it's critical for you to measure all of these KPIs we have on the screen. So what you are literally checking with the cash conversion cycle is just assuring that you're okay working capital-wise. Negotiate terms that ensure that you've received enough from your debtors before you promise to pay your supplier. So, I mean, it's interesting when I see people talk and say, hey, it takes me 20 days to pay or to receive money from debtors or from my customers. And then you've agreed terms with your supplier that you'll pay them within 10 days. This is going to put you under pressure because it means in 10 days, you have to start looking for money that you never get until 20 days. So that means you need to start financing or thinking of financing cash flows, which comes with some costs, right? So not to bore you with all of these formulas, remember, there's a cash flow margin, but I've mentioned to you that cash flow per share is always critical because that's really what your investors are trying to maximize. Now, how do you manage the business cash flows? I have some tips here. They are tips that have been tested by, tested by different professionals and practitioners, right? So, I'll start. So, sorry. I don't know what's happening. Can you still see my screen? Mr. Latche, please, can you assist to check if you can still see my screen? Just trying to confirm. Hello?
We can see your screen.
Okay, all right. So the first thing is always have a budget. Creating a budget is critical because it then allows you to have a reflection, have a think of when you intend to earn money and how you intend to spend it. So always have a budget. In fact, if you have and for startup, I mean, because the cash burn is always very high. What I've seen or what we've advised some clients in the past is to tell them at the beginning of every week, have like a cash flow budget for the week. Know what you are spending for your operations, or is just like luxury. So ensure you have a budget and stick to it. It's good to have a budget, but ensure that you stick to it and keep a record. So once you have your budget, keep a record of those cash flows when you eventually spend it, because when you the actual versus the budget, right, for you to be able to make these future decisions. Review your spending regularly, and the reason why you need to do this is you need to see when you are overspending and when you need to cut down your spending, right? And introduce credit controls. So a good credit control is you assessing your customers just to ensure that they have good credit ratings and they are going to make their payments to you as they want you. Because remember, I mentioned earlier that try to ensure that you balance your receivables days and your payables days. Now, even if you balance that, imagine one of your customers just messes you up, right? So you need to ensure that you're actually giving credit to the right people, right? try as much as possible to diversify your revenue streams. So if you can't have a single customer and say you have a good cash flow management system in place, because what that means is if that customer fails you, then it can literally kill your business. And same with products. So try to diversify your revenue streams and then your product lines. Make use of technology. So one thing we've realized in recent time is technology has a way of reducing cash spending. Why it might look like a major capex, a major spending at the time of implementing such technology, you realize that in the long term it might save the business a lot of money. So as much as possible, try to automate your time-consuming task. This can mean that you need to restructure the organization and all of that. And most important, you sit within the business and you're also the advisor. It's always critical. It's always difficult to see where the problem sits, right? So seeking professional help and guidance from other people outside the organization is always important, because they then are able to bring in their expertise. They are able to bring in their experience to bear and to guide you as to how to manage your situation or your cash flow problem. And you need to ensure that you maintain good business relationship with everybody, because if you then have good business relationship with your supplier, when you are then in a problem, you can easily negotiate and say, hey, sorry, I'm unable to make payments this day. Can I postpone it for 2 days or 3 days and all of that, right? Even with your lenders, because if you have good relation with your lender, then you can easily get some short-term financing to cushion the effect of working capital issue. And please, you have to know your warning signs. When are you in a problem? You know, one thing is knowing the problem is actually halfway to solving the problem. So you have to know the warning signs. Keep your eye on the business credit scores, right? Because this will enable you to know when there is really when there's need to seek for help, right? Then the last thing is now seeking help before things go too far. Don't allow the lender, don't allow the investor to come with their strong stick before you seek help, right? Because at that time it might be too late. If you allow your lender, your creditor, at that point in time, they might be talking about bankruptcy, right? But if you've managed the cash flow properly, you've sorted everybody, you've carried everybody along, then you won't have to get to that point. So before those that holds the stick comes for you, please seek for help. Now, the cool things to look at is when you have surplus cash, right? You need to either think about having a long-term investment. If that surplus cash is long-term, you have cash that you know you don't need for anything. You've settled everybody. You don't need it for anything. Then think long-term investment, right? Long-term investment can be you investing in maybe a subsidiary or down the value chain of your business, right? You can buy a business that probably sells to you. So what that means is you guaranteed your supplier, right? But if it's short term, then 3 things that you must consider when you are investing in a short term, because you know the business needs that money, but you just want to play with that money before the business needs it. So what that means is you have to be careful, because you need to be ensuring you need to look at the liquidity, the safety, and the profitability. What return will I make from it? Will this money be available when I need it? Imagine you need a surplus cash that you will need in the short term, and you goes ahead to go and buy land. Land is illiquid, right? So when you need that money in 3 months' time, you might take you another 3 months to look for buyer to get the land, right? So think about the liquidity, think about the safety, and think about the profitability. And when it's short term, you can think of any of these short-term investments. I'm sure Wale will take us through this when we get to his session. Yeah. Then one key thing I also want to mention, because when we look at a lot of organizations, right, we've realized that the problem with with cash flow typically starts with working capital, right? So I want to spend some time talking about working as well. And this I think I have, if I'm wrong, I think it's about 5 moments. So in managing your working capital, please ensure that your inventory management system is in place. You are not keeping obsolete inventory. You are not keeping inventories beyond the standard number of days that you should keep. You're also not keeping inventory that is slow moving. So manage your inventory properly, manage your receivables very well. Receivables in the sense that give credit terms that are not too expensive for you, because if you give credit terms of 90 days to your people, to your customers, remember that's you tying down your capital for 90 days. So ensure that if that's the case then and you are not able to earn interest or to earn return on that receivables, right? You can decide to price that opportunity cost into your pricing for that receivables. And I've seen organizations have different sales price to different customers based on how long it takes each of the customers to settle. What that organization is typically doing is they are pricing the opportunity costs, right, of tying down their money for 30, 90 days into the price of the product. And then, I mean, why are you trying to be very careful with your receivables? Then you need to have a strict conversation with your suppliers. Have a strict conversation with them. Remember, they are just on your other side. I mean, the way you're thinking with your receivables, that's also the way they are thinking with you, right? So as much as possible, have strict conversation with them. Let them see your pain points. Let them know the challenges you have in getting your own your own cash in from your customers, and put this into consideration when you are negotiating terms with them. There are different metrics for for measuring working capital. I don't want to bore these. We all know this, but just remember that by standard, I have like 2x of your current liabilities as current assets. So you can still be able to have some liquid assets if by any reason you need to settle your liabilities. By standard as well, your quick ratio have about 1:1, so that, I mean, the cash that we've excluded or the inventory you can still have enough inventory for your customers. Okay, then remember to always consider the length of your working capital cycle. What's the management attitude to risk? Is your working capital situation permanent, or is it fluctuating? Permanent in the sense that you can't really get out of this. And I'll give you an example. If you look at the what's it called? If you look at the working capital situation of power generating companies in Nigeria, I mean, you will realize that you can't say it's permanent, right? Because there are a lot of legacy debts that have been owed to the government, owed by the government rather, the subsidy on the electricity and all of that. Because of the value in the way the industry is structured, where to Gencos and all of that. So it starts fluctuating. It's permanent. This will probably be for as long as 6 months to 1 year. So what that means is, and remember, your staff needs their money every 30 days. Then you need to start thinking around how you intend to manage this, because if your staff should close shop and say they are no longer coming to work, then you don't have a business. The business is going to close down, right? So you need to do unit. Is it long term? Is it short term? Right? Because in the power sector example that I quoted, right? You go and you go get short term financing to manage that situation. The question is, in the next months, you are back in the same problem. So when you are managing your working capital, right? And I just want to mention this, that you need to carefully manage it or consider it when you are managing your working capital. Consider the creditworthiness of your customers. Consider your competitive advantage. If you don't have good competitive advantage in the market space, then you need to start thinking, oh, can I really be straight with my customers, right? Consider the profitability, because the working capital requirements, when we do valuation, for example, there is an adjustment that we make for net working capital. People don't put it in consideration, but it has huge value implications. So consider what's or how the working capital affects your cash flows and all of that. Then lastly, when you're managing your receivables and your payables, you know, as I've mentioned earlier, in giving credit to them, consider the credit period, have a strict credit limit, charge interest on overdue payments, right? Then monitor age receivable list, especially, I mean, I think I don't know if that practice is still in place in organizations these days. You categorize your receivables into age. Those that are short-term, current, 0 to 30 days. You don't. I mean, I've seen instances where people don't pay attention to them, but more recently, I tell my clients, I said, look, you have to focus on them, because if these guys can settle you quickly, that means you can avoid getting into the same problem that the over 90 days, the over 120 days have put you, right? So while it's important to monitor the aged receivables list, monitor the current ones as well, and ensure that they pay you as quickly as possible, right? And I mean, if they become difficult, then sell the receivables. Consider debt factoring and all of that, just to ensure that you get your money in as quickly as possible. I mean, even though it might be at a distance. Always consider that your payables are good people. Payables is always, I tell people, payables is a free cash, is a way to finance your business at zero costs, because payables, you know, I mean, if they are not as smart as you are with your customers, then you can get them to finance you at a very cheap cost, right? Or zero cost, right? And then demand for discount from them. And remember, it comes with no cost, unlike bank overdrafts or loans. So, and I mean, as much as you don't want to get into a problem with your customers, also try to pay your payables as and when due, just to maintain your reputation in the marketplace. Avoid late payments, get you into trouble with fees, with penalties, or value charges. And most importantly, manage or maintain good relations with your suppliers, just to ensure that you optimize your cash flows. Okay, that's really it from my end. I think the questions will come in after this session. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Ishola, for that wonderful presentation. For those of us that benefited from his session, can you all hear me? Please confirm. I'm testing a new system just to be sure this mic is working.
We can hear you, sir.
Okay, thank you. So thanks, Mr. Ishola, for that wonderful session. We will appreciate participants on the call who benefited from Mr. Ishola's presentation, you know, to appreciate him with emoji clap, in as much as we can do that. I took lots and lots of jottings. I possibly more or less like improve myself when it comes to cash flow management. And I'm sure we all did the same. And equally, you know, stayed right on time, you know, trying to saving us some considerable time. Thanks, Grace Ekin, you know, for that appreciation. For those others that benefited from him, please let's give him, let's encourage him, you know, with a show of emojis as well. So we'll now be proceeding to the second presenter in the person of Mr. Wale Okunriboye, who will be taking us on the topic tagged Exploring Investment Opportunities in the Money Market. While he prep his presentation, let me quickly, run through his profile. So at least we understand how solid our presenter is. Mr. Wale is a seasoned investment professional with over a decade worth of experience across macroeconomics, fixed income, and equities. He commenced his career as a research analyst with ARM investment managers, where he provided research coverage across several sectors, um, financial, agriculture, consumer goods, and beverages, that cut across different industries. From ARM investment managers, he moved on to EcoBank as a fixed income and currency specialist, where he was responsible for tracking development in fixed income currency market across 33 countries within the sub-Saharan Africa, where the bank had presence. And his report served as input for the bank's treasury units and securities wealth assets management division. From there, he joined the Sigma Pensions in 2018, where he worked as a portfolio manager and lead investment strategist that led to the restructuring efforts of the Sigma Pension investment portfolios, which resulted in uplift in performance from bottom quartile rankings to top quartile position. He was appointed Deputy Chief Investment Officer in 2022 and currently Chief Investment Officer of Access Pension. He's a first-class graduate of economics from Covenant University, and he has a master's degree in economics from University College London, and is equally a CFA charter holder. He facilitates various training sessions for ICAN, and he holds a certificate in ESG from the CFA Institute. I present to you Mr. Wale Okunreboye, who will be treating the topic exploring investment opportunities in the money market. Over to you, Mr. Wale.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for welcoming me here. Can you all see my screen just to confirm? Maybe
yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. So in the next 30 minutes, I'll just try and talk through exploring investment opportunities in money market. I think Sulaiman has done a good job in providing the context around which why for companies should take cash flow planning seriously. And one thing that can help is exploring investment opportunities in money market, because particularly for working capital purposes, money markets often present a very good opportunity or place to gain extra income by deploying unused cash into. First things first, I would always try to say whenever I'm talking about investment, all investing involves risk. And as such, everyone should always be aware of that. There's no investment that is risk-free. There's no free lunch, basically, when it comes to investment. Always be aware of the risk. So today, I'll just briefly talk through, before I get to money market, there are two types of investment instruments in general. You have what we call variable income, and you have what they call fixed income. Fixed income securities refer to securities that promise you a fixed return with reference to a specific period. So you have various types: fixed deposit, treasury bills, bonds, and the sort. Now, within the fixed income space, the focus today is on money market securities. Now, the difference between money market and wider fixed income securities is that money market refers to that segment of the fixed income market that is for short-term investment. So investments typically that mature or close out within a calendar year or less than a calendar year. Now, they're very, very useful or very, very popular avenue for companies in general, individuals to invest idle monies, and also for individuals and companies to raise short-term financing. They play a very vital role in every economy, and their liquidity helps businesses and individuals in general to operate within the larger financial system. Usually a key sign of whether a financial system is healthy is how liquid are the money markets, or the size of the money market. The money market is large, is vibrant, is dynamic, then typically you'd always correlate it with a very, very dynamic, wider capital market. The main features of money market securities are by nature, they are short duration. typically from anything from overnight to a few months, but generally less than 1 year. They are very liquid. In other words, you can you can liquidate or withdraw or call those monies back with only a very minimal impact on price. They're low risk generally. It doesn't mean there's zero risk. They involve some risk, but risk is generally low. And typically the money market is very deep. It involves many players, individuals, banks, all kinds of financial institutions play within that space. They're also fairly regulated as well by central banks and government authorities because of their key role at the base of the financial system. And the most popular money market instruments that people often use are commercial papers, bank deposits, and treasury bills. And there's also what we call money market funds, which just provide an opportunity to play all these three instruments. The first one are fixed deposit placements. These are where typically individuals or institutions typically enter into an agreement with a bank to place monies for a specific predefined period. Now, the idea is that for that period you place monies with the bank, you earn an interest rate, which usually tracks where market interest rates are. They're often a very good tool for managing excess liquidity. So typically when you have cash that you don't presently have a payment request for, fixed deposits are typically where most people tend to place monies in because they provide all kinds of flexibility in particular. You can recall them subject to certain fees, but they typically are where a lot of people always deposit money in. Most organizations typically have a fixed placement accounts with commercial banks. Typically, if you have a lot of cash within a period and you want to put that cash towards another period, you can call up your bank and ask to place that money in a fixed deposit, and they'll offer you. The key features are usually the interest rate is fixed. So at upfront, you know what the interest rate is. Typically, the interest rate today in today's market, anywhere between 20 to 25% for large institutions. For smaller individuals, it could be less. But typically, you typically get a fixed rate upfront. There are variable rate fixed deposit, but typically those are not popular in our market. The term is also predefined. So in other words, usually you know the date upfront. If it's 90 days, which is 3 months, or 180 days, 6 months. But usually it always ends within a 12-month cycle. Typically for larger transactions, you earn higher rates. So if you're bringing in more money in Nigeria, typically if you're bringing in more than 500 million to 1 billion, you can be able to extract a higher rate. But if you're bringing in a smaller sum, then of course the bank will try and adjust the size to sort of right size the rate. Typically the principal is what you agree on. The principal is the amount that's returned plus accrued interest on maturity. Usually in the event that you want to recall the money, let's say you placed money for 90 days and you wanted to recall it on day 56, there's usually a withdrawal, a charge the bank will charge you for, a withdrawal penalty. And so that penalty typically applies on the accrued interest that you've earned, usually between 10 to 20% for most banks. And there's also credit risk as well. So if you're involved in fixed deposit, you're exposed to the credit risk of the bank. So the bank that you're placing that money with, you're actually exposed to their credit risk. There are also opportunities for rollover. So some people, you place money for 60 days and you don't have any need at that point when it matures. You could have the rollover option with the bank so that you can roll it over for another 60 days, as the case may be. Typically in Nigeria, what I just put here is data from the central bank website, which just shows where deposit rates are as of July. These are average deposit rates, so it varies across board. But typically it varies every month. And this data is from the central bank website. The other type of money market securities we have are treasury bills. Treasury bills are short-term instruments that bear the full faith and credit of the federal government, and they're typically used for managing government short-term financing operations. So they're typically issued three tenors, 91 days, 182 days, and 364 days. That's 90 days, 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year. And typically the auctions are organized every 2 weeks by the central bank. Investors submit a bid through their bank about how much they intend to buy and the rates at which they are willing to accept. Successful subscriber at the auction, typically the government allocates and determines where the clearing rate is. There's a calendar always issued every quarter, regards how much the government is going to issue. Usually there's a minimum amount you can start with for treasury bills. That minimum amount is in around 50 million naira. As I said earlier, you typically have 3 standard maturities, and they are discounted instruments. So what typically happens is that you invest at a discount and then your full amount is paid. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you wanted to invest, say, 10 million naira in treasury bills. Typically what's going to happen is that the government you only fund, let's assume the discount rate is set, and that rate comes to about, what should typically happen is that on the day of the investment, the government will take 90 million naira from you, and then on maturity, they'll pay you 9 million naira, and then on maturity, they'll pay you 10 million naira. So that's the way it's a discounted instrument. Your investment is, you don't get the interest at the end, you get the sort of, they back out the interest from what you are going to invest, and then on maturity, they pay you the full face value of that investment. They are very liquid. They have a very liquid secondary market in Nigeria. In other words, if you don't want to wait till the 91 days or the end of the 1 year, you can sell your security in the market. It could be at a profit or it could be at a loss, but you can sell it to generate immediate cash. And the FMDQ provides daily quotations on where those prices are. If you wanted to trade in and out of it. Another instrument that's also popular is what you call short-term commercial papers. These are the main differences that between commercial papers and treasury bills, that treasury bills issued by the government and commercial papers issued by companies. So for some companies that are very large blue chip companies in particular, that want to raise money and don't want to borrow from a bank, they could directly issue commercial papers to the market. So they provide a short-term source of financing for companies. So for very large companies, rather than borrow from a bank, and the main advantage here is that if you borrow money from a bank, typically the bank interest rate is a floating rate. In other words, as financial market conditions change, the bank can decide to change the interest rate on those loans. Those are floating rate loans. However, if you wanted to lock in a fixed rate over a period of time, in other words, you just wanted to say, okay, we want to borrow for 1 year. I want to know this is our rate. Our rate is not going to change. Maybe 6 months down the line, the central bank has raised interest rates. You now want to change it. So typically, organizations sometimes prefer to use commercial papers as a means of locking in their rates over a period of time, so as to have that certainty. And also for investors as well, also provide an opportunity for you to also invest as well. So it provides an opportunity for companies and also for individuals and organizations to deploy idle cash. The main difference is that relative to government security, the risk is relatively higher. Government securities are typically rated at AAA, whilst other organizations anywhere between AAA, AA, A rated, and BBB. In Nigeria, you're not allowed to issue publicly. You're not allowed to issue publicly commercial papers that are below investment grades. And so commercial papers, again, these are 2 examples that I just pulled off the internet. So you have companies that are raising commercial papers. Typically, it's often stated, you see the discount rates. They're also discounted instruments like treasury bills. You see the discount rates, the name of the sponsor, the credit rating. Usually, subscription is set at usually 5 million naira, minimum of 5 million, and multiples of 1,000 naira thereabout. And they also always have to be listed, usually on the FMDQ Securities Exchange. As you can see, the dates, the tenor is stated, clearly stated, and also the issuer ratings are also always stated as well. In Nigeria, you're not allowed to issue a commercial paper without a credit rating from one of the credited credit rating agencies in Nigeria. Typically, the use of commercial paper is to fund working capital, and for investors, it's typically to invest in short-term securities. As I said, they're discounted instruments. Again, here, they're issued by credit-worthy entities in Nigeria. You always have a minimum credit rating of BBB. There's a minimum entry size. Whilst for treasury bills is 50 million, for commercial papers, usually that minimum starts at like 5 million naira and above. It's liquid, but not as liquid as treasury bills. But if you wanted to sell, you could sell, but it's not as liquid as treasury bills. Then another class of money market instruments, which just tries to capture everything, is what we call money market mutual funds. And these are funds that provide investors an opportunity to get exposure to short-term fixed income securities, low risk, depending on how the mutual fund is structured. So what they do is they provide a pooled exposure to all these 3 instruments. So in other words, if you want to gain exposure to all these 3 instruments, one way, and you don't have the size, one way to do all of that is to go through a money market mutual fund. Typically, they are safe. They allow pooled investment, typically for individuals. All individuals may not have 5 million naira to purchase a commercial paper. All individuals may not have 50 million naira to be able to buy treasury bills upfront. So what you may find usually, or what you can advise, is that if you wanted to, and meanwhile, if you try to go a bank placement, the rate you get may not be high. So what a money market mutual fund does is that it allows you to join other people. So because you join other people, it's pooled together, and that pool is bigger and can get better rates, and it will easily comply with all the threshold requirements you have for treasury bills, commercial papers, and to get higher yields of bank placements. It's also very liquid. Usually investors can withdraw on demand. I think when commercial papers started being issued in Nigeria, people said you had to wait for 30 days. Eventually, it drew down to 1 week. And then today, within 24 hours, usually, you can withdraw your investment from a money market fund. And returns are also stable. They tend to stable because interest rates are rising. They will also rise with that. They distribute regular income as well. So every quarter, they typically have distribution. Some have more periodic distributions of interest. They're low risk, they're very liquid, they're stable, and they offer diversification. In Nigeria, currently, there are about 35 SEC registered money market mutual funds. Data is, the AUM is around 1.2 trillion. And you can invest as little as 2,000 naira for many of them. The data is published daily on the Securities and Exchange Commission's website. And the yield as well, they also tell you what the running yield on some of these money market funds. And I pulled this data off as the most recent data on SEC website this morning. Typically, as I said, commercial paper are discount instruments. So there's a mathematics around how you compute the discount, how the discount translates to the yield, because the yield is really what you can use to compare with other instruments. This material is available. I'll share this. But usually, these T-bills and commercial papers are quoted at discount, although when most investors invest, what you earn is the yield. And just looking at asset classes, what happens over time is that, this is a long-term history. Present in terms of where yields are today, treasury bill yields today are anywhere between 20 to 25%. They went as high as 27% sometime in the year, earlier in the year. Commercial papers typically are around where treasury bill rates are because it's typically plus a spread. The way to think of it is that treasury bills are seen as lower risk. Bank placements come next, and then commercial papers come afterwards. So what you typically find is there's always a premium between the bank placements and commercial papers over the treasury bills. Now, what the money market funds will typically give you is sort of a weighted average around all these three. And then also, they also less a fee, which is the fee paid by the arranger of the money market mutual fund for the benefit you're getting. So how do you sort of put this into practice? What I would always say is for organizations, one thing to always try and do, and this is what I think Suleiman was trying to say, which is understand your cash flow cycle. If you can understand your cash flow cycle over a 12-month period, which basically is just try to itemize what are the regular payments and receipts of cash that you regularly receive. That's the ones that you can see over a 12-month period, over the next 12 months. What are my potential inflows and outflows? Inflows that payments that I know I will be required to make, and then receipts of money that I know will likely come in as well. Once you can do that, you can bulk them into buckets, short term 1 to 3 months, medium term 3 to 6 months, and then over a 1 year, 9 to 12 months. What are these? Create buckets around it, and then make sure that you have within these 3 buckets, you have investments that you make that mature, that repay principal into those 3 buckets, such that if you have, let's say, you have to pay salaries as what, maybe say 20 million naira on a monthly basis, you make sure that within those 3 months, within the next 3 months, you have investments, whether it's bank placements or treasury bills that are maturing within that period. So that if you have it maturing within that period, it's covered on that side. And then typically, the way most people sort of look at it is to try and create a cycle whereby you have, okay, for the next 1 to 3 months, because typically most bank placements are usually short term, 190 days, 120 days, maybe sometimes 150 days. And so with that, you can say, okay, over the next 3 months, I'll use fixed deposit to cover any payments I need to make by the next 3 months. Then for longer duration instrument, anything within the 6 month to 12-month bucket, you can say, okay, either of treasury bills or commercial papers, depending on what's available, I'll put it in those buckets so that I know that within that period, I have cash that's going to come in. Then if you have any buffer, so in other words, if you're worried about, once you've covered your known payments, you can sort of say, okay, let me just put a buffer in a money market fund. Now, the reason why I put in a money market fund is that just in case something comes up, with the money market fund, you can terminate it on very short notice and use it without paying any significant withdrawal charge. Whereas if you did that with a bank placement, the bank may charge you a penalty charge for withdrawing that money. And so sometimes you could just have that buffer in a money market fund so that you don't have idle cash just lying in a bank earning you very low interest. The difference can be quite significant. Interest rate on overnight balances typically anywhere between 0 and 8%, one third of where the monetary policy rate is. And depending on how long you keep it there, that's what you likely earn. And depending on how many withdrawals you make as well, that also impacts the rate you could earn. Whereas on the upside, if you were to invest in maybe treasury bills today at 20% or commercial papers at 22, 23, 27%, the difference is income that you would have earned. Not so that you do that rather than leaving the money in the money market in your overnight, you just put it in those investments, you earn that extra income and improve your interest income that you earn on your money market portfolio. So sometimes it's always good to think of it that way. Of course, if there are any gaps within your 12-month cycle, if you look at that cycle and see that there's a gap, in other words, the gap is maybe when you have payments to make and you don't have any investment, you then need to come up with a solution. Maybe you need to make some investments, move some monies around to ensure you have or have a solution for that place where you have any gap. Always review it monthly so that at least on a periodic basis, you are reviewing to see if there are any gaps developing or any imbalances anywhere. And then, of course, codify it into a policy, have it as a standard policy. This is how we manage our money market portfolio. The goal is to optimize our money market cash so that we earn the best yields. The best yield you typically get, like I said, between treasury bills, commercial papers, and fixed deposit. We adjusted for the tenors as well. And then you also meet your objectives of ensuring that position can meet payments as at when due, when you need to make those payments. For individuals, what I always try to say is that treasury bills are one of the many things you can do to improve your personal investment portfolio. They help you diversify. Typically, with individuals who don't have a lot of money currently, typically most people's first investment is with fixed money market securities, because of differences on risk or differences on risk or differences on maybe duration. Typically, because typically when you start your career, if you're in a cycle, in the life cycle, when you're starting your career, your income is not very high. So most people tend to do money market investment. Then as your income increases, then you can start to diversify into other more sophisticated things like equities, bonds, and things like that. I think this statement by Einstein, that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world, really. Whatever the world we always think is, in terms of investing, always think time, consistency, and put a good portion of this is value for individuals, and then of course to diversify as well. I think I'll just pause here if there are any questions. Maybe we'll take the questions in the Q&A section. I hope I was optimal on time. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wali. That's an excellent presentation. Very concise and up to the point. And I'm sure our members will equally show appreciations for what they've learned through their emojis. And your early conclusion has equally even opened more time slot for the question and answer session. Thanks, members, for appreciating him. I gain a lot personally as well while following through his presentation style. We are now in the question and answer session. I think for the next 30 minutes, we can take as many questions as we have as relates to the first and second presenter. So if any of us have questions, we are willing to, if you don't want to put them in the chat box, you want to engage with the presenters, kindly indicate by show of raising your hands through the raise hand option. So at least we know how many we are going for. If you have questions, kindly indicate by a show of hands if you want to speak or engage them, or if you don't want to, you can put them in the chat box so we can take all the questions. Or is it that the presenters were so good and they've answered all, they've attended to all your areas of concerns in the course of the presentation? Yeah, Mr. Christian Wora, the slides will be shared as we mentioned earlier in the program. You will get the slides, you will get the recording, and you will get your 5 MCPD credit hours with ICAN. It will be sent to all registered, in as much as you got the links to this webinar. It is through the same medium. You are going to get the slides as well as the recording. Okay.
Please, I want to ask question.
Okay, who is that?
Akos Festus from Edo State.
Oh, okay. Mr. Festus,
Yes.
you can go ahead with your question.
Please, I want to...
Hold on, sir. I'm seeing some questions in the chat room as well. So once Mr. Festus is done with his question, I will read. So ask, give us your name, your membership number, then direct, confirm the person you want to answer your question among the two presenters, and then you can go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Festus Akosi, membership number MB025095 from Edo State. Please, I want to ask the second presenter, what is the system doing to close the gap between when you put money in the commercial banks and they give you interest of 6-8%, and when you go there to borrow, they will charge you interest of 50%. What is the system doing to close that gap? I think it's unfair to somebody who put his money in the bank and give 8%. Why is going there to collect from the bank will not charge in excess of 30%. That is my question.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Okorogoyim, do you want to attend to that?
Yes. So typically what tends to happen is that banks look at when they're, in terms of arriving at their decisions to price loans, they typically look at what is their weighted average fund cost. So in other words, because what always look at it from the perspective of the bank is the business of, a bank makes money when it lends money out. Yeah, depositors' money is part of what you call their inputs in their process. So because an input, what you always try and do is you always try and optimize. In other words, keep your input costs down. So trying to keep your input costs down, typically there are rules around it. So for example, in Nigeria, the deposit rate is set at 1/3 of the MPR rate. That's the savings rate on deposits. We set at 1/3 of the MPR. And then, of course, depending on the size you bring. So if the amount you bring in is a very small amount, the bank will look at it within the context of its weighted average. What is the weighted average fund that I have? Typically, because for retail individuals, as an individual, your amount that you bring to the bank is small. Another person who is bringing a bigger amount is able to command a higher rate. And that's the way banks work to optimize their funding costs. So on the asset side, what the bank is looking at is what is my weighted average cost of funding? And how much spread can I earn on that spread relative to where market interest rates are? Because what I mean by market interest rates is, for example, if Treasury bill rates today are 20%, for the bank, lending to Treasury bill, investing your money that you mobilize on the mobility side in Treasury bills is lower risk than if you lend it to somebody and then that person can maybe the economy happens or things happen and he's not able to pay you back. So what they then do is that Treasury bill rate becomes like a floor below which they cannot lend below. Because if you had the option of investing in something that gives you 20%, the option of lending to somebody else, you would want to price that loan at least higher than that Treasury bill rate, because the best thing you could have done for yourself is just take that money and invest at the Treasury bill rate. So it's a bit difficult. What I always advise for individuals and organizations is always to think of banks as an avenue for investment. So as one of the options, rather than the main option to place money. So for example, if you went to, and as we said, as I spoke during the presentation, you need to decide what you want to do. So let's say you have 100 million naira to pay. And that 100 million naira, you determine, okay, you're only going to need 30 million naira in 30 to 60 days. You can put that 30 million naira in deposit. But then the remainder, you can buy treasury bills with it. You can go and invest in a commercial paper with it. So that way, you're also because what you're doing with the bank is just an investment option. It's not the only option. If you can forecast what your capital cycle will be, and you know that, okay, within 30 to 60 days, you only need just 30% of that money, 30 million, then that 30 million you can put in a fixed deposit. The remaining money, you go and invest it in something else, like a treasury bills or higher security. And that way you find yourself better because you're just an option to the bank in their own pool of funding. And so the way to sort of manage it is to ensure that you diversify your own portfolio. Don't put everything in. Or, like I said earlier, you can also go to money market mutual funds. The rate for most money market mutual funds today is between 18 and 21%. You can also do that as well because there's really no difference between a bank and a money market mutual fund. A bank can collapse. Most people always think a bank is the only option, but the only reason why banks offer an advantage is because if you want to pay money to someone, you can transfer money and make all those things immediately through a bank. So it just means that we just need to plan ourselves better because in most countries, that spread is not very well. And the reason why that spread is not very high is because more individuals invest monies and have the option of the bank rate is not high. They can move that money and invest in treasury bills. They can move that money and invest in money market mutual funds. So that forces the rates differential between lending and depositing to not be very high. But because in Nigeria, a lot of people's default option when they're saving is to just put the money in the bank deposit. And the bank, knowing that it has a pool, can always charge it lower price. So if you wanted to get that benefit, the easiest way for you to just do is just plan your capital cycle very well. Put only the amount you need to make transactional needs in the bank, and the remaining of that money, you invest it in money market funds, in treasury bills, and commercial papers, and so which pay you a higher rate. So if you really want a higher rate, you are the one that has to pay for it. The bank is just an option for you. It's not as if you must give your money to the bank. The bank is not the only option. I hope that sort of captures it.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Wale, for that expressive response. Mr. Ephraim Mamo, you have the floor. Kindly unmute yourself.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Thank you, organizers, and thank you, our great facilitators. I would like the last speaker to talk about, I've seen a federal government bond, a dollar-denominated bond. I would like you to say something about it. Is it something viable? And then secondly, recently, maybe because of this recent capitalization or recapitalization of the banks, we saw a lot of banks floating public offers, and then of course some even giving right issues and all those stuff. So are those things viable, or just because of they need to meet up with the recapitalization requirements that they are just floating and selling all those shares? I just want you to throw light around that, and then possibly if it's something someone can really go into as well. Thank you.
Okay. I think yes. So the first question on the federal government and domestic dollar bond, which is yielding for 5 years. So this is a novel instrument. Usually what governments do is all governments typically raise to find if a country is going through what you call a current account deficit. Sometimes governments may require to raise foreign loans so as to be able to get dollars to support their currency or to support help plug their any deficit you have in their balance of payment accounts. And so what the Nigerian government is doing is, rather than going to London, New York, where typically these bills are being issued, the government believes that, look, there's a lot of dollars available in Nigeria, but that dollars is not within the financial system. So why don't we issue a domestic dollar bond and try and mobilize those dollar deposits that people have just sitting idle in their bank account so that we can use it? Because it is We can't use that dollars of the country. Meanwhile, there's a dollar shortage, which is driving the currency weaker. So at least if you can mobilize domestic dollar deposits and invest in securities, then you sort of created a new asset class for yourself as against the conventional Eurobond. I mean, the yield that's been offered is 9.75 to a 5-year. It's not too far off where the current Eurobond is. So in other words, if Nigeria were to issue a Eurobond nationally, it will probably be around the same yield level. So if most people already invest in Eurobonds, you have Nigerians who buy Eurobonds, I think it's also a good investment because it's been issued by the federal government. The federal government has issued and repaid Eurobonds. Nigeria first started issuing a Eurobond of 2011, and that Eurobond, I think, was repaid in 2022. So Nigeria has generally been paying Eurobonds in general. So Eurobond, I think the first maturity was 2018. The government has been paying Eurobonds. I think it's just a new way of accessing USD financing. And because the government believes that there are a lot of people that have dollars domestically, and if you can mobilize those dollars and invest it and then use it for your own borrowing needs, it's easier than going offshore to London or to Europe to try and raise Eurobonds for national investors. So does it make sense for investors? I mean, I think it makes sense because it provides opportunities for diversification, price diversification, and also because the yield is also quite attractive as well. It involves risk, of course. All investments involve risk. So because the instrument being issued is not Naira, the Nigerian government earns its revenues in Naira, although it earns some revenues in dollars, but its predominant currencies in Naira. So of course, there's that currency risk that, of course, if at some point the government's revenues in dollars is not enough, then of course there's a risk of default. I'm not saying the government is default, but I'm just saying that it's a risk that you should be aware about. So credit risk is always a risk to think about it, given that it's in another currency. But I think historically, the Nigerian government has always paid all its Eurobonds, coupons, payments as and when due. So there's no reason to believe we won't see that in the near term. But for individuals, it's a good investment. I'll say it's a good investment, but of course, you need to consult with a financial advisor as always so that you can get a much more proper perspective. The second question was on banking offers. So yes, a lot of banks have come out since the central bank mentioned raised capital base. And now, because central bank said that the capital requirements are going to be equity, in other words, the only definition of capital the central bank decided to take was equity capital. I think that's where the issue is coming from. So because of that, it means banks have to raise equity capital. And if you have to raise equity capital and you're already listed, it then means you have to do a public offer, whether it's a right issue or a full-scale public offer to try and raise the equity capital required to meet the central bank requirements. I think what I would always say is that individuals should look at each bank on a case-by-case basis, consult a financial advisor so that you look at each bank as an investment program on a case-by-case basis. Some banks may have an attractive prospect. What you can do, you can forecast their projected cash flows or profitability over the next 3 to 5 years and see what the dividend they could yearly pay comes to. That dividend, based on the per share, based on the offer price, if the yield looks attractive, if the implied yield looks something like attractive, then I think you should consider it for investment. If the yield doesn't look good, then maybe just not consider it. So I think the most important thing, what I will say is when you're investing is to look at what potential returns can I get. You think maybe the bank will go to declare dividends of 3 naira, 4 naira. Look at what the offer price is. If the offer price is say 20 naira, you can then say, okay, this is what I think the implied dividend yield will be. And then based on that, I'm going to make the investment. I want the investment. What advice again is have a financial advisor, consult the financial advisor to get more deeper details on it. But yes, as you said, the reason is because central bank wants everyone to raise equity capital, and the only way you raise equity capital is you sell either a right or a public offer. And of course, each bank is different. Everyone needs to look at each bank differently, make a decision on the bank you pick based on what you think they can do, based on their financial, read their prospectus, see what they plan to use the money for. Is it things that will generate high returns or low returns? And then from there, you can make a decision as to whether or not you want to patronize that public offer or not patronize.
Okay, thanks for that expressive response as well. I think all the questions in the chat box are targeted at you, Mr. Okuneboye. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read them out. Kindly take notes so at least you can attend to them after reading through all the questions. So at least we use that to save our time as well. One of our participants asked, banks are not giving interest again on savings accounts. We want to know why, in case you know. Another person is question on treasury bills, that what do you do when the government fails to pay you your interest or pay back your principal, going by what is currently happening within the economy? I guess the person is talking about the liquidity or revenue challenges of the government, but probably might be able to provide some perspective. Thanks, Mr. Toluwani, for attending to Mr. Thompson Egedegu's questions on the interest to get on his investment. So I guess our presenter doesn't need to answer that. There's another question on bankers' acceptance. The participant wants to know if it is still in the mix of money market instruments, whether it's bankers' acceptance is still in the mix of money market instruments. And then I think there is another question: how reliable is mutual funds investment, and which organization can you recommend? Another participant is asking a question whether you have anything relating to cryptocurrency as a source of financing ventures, if you have any perspective relating to that. Someone else asked, what's the least amount individual can invest in treasury bills? I guess one of our participants will probably be reaching out to you. Somebody wants to make money market funds and fixed income as a full-time business. Possibly by the time they get your slide and get your contact details, you'll probably be able to have a one-on-one session with them. I think that's all the questions. If you have similarities, probably you can bunch them together. And if you want to probably talk through them all. That will be all the questions relating to this session. So once you are done, we'll move on to the next item of the agenda. Over to you, Mr. Okuneboye. Hope you got all the questions.
Yes.
Thank you.
So the first question, interest on bank deposit. So typically what happens is, I said, so if you open a savings account and you place money there, typically what ideally in an ideal environment, so there's a difference between a current account and a savings account. In an ideal sense, a savings account is an account that you're just meant to save money in. You're not meant to withdraw money from that account ordinarily. But in Nigeria, what you tend to find is that most people's current account acts like most people's savings account is really like what I would call a transactional account. It's where you keep money that, let's say you're going to buy a biscuit or buy something, it's that same account you're going to take money out of. So it's a savings account, but it's also a current account. It has the feature. Although you call it savings account, your behavior towards it is more like a current account. So what typically happens is that in Nigeria, by regulation, the bank is supposed to pay you on a savings account a rate not less than 1/3 of where the monetary policy rate is. So the monetary policy rate in Nigeria today is around 26.7%. So 1/3 of that is what the bank is supposed to pay you in terms of interest rates. However, if you withdraw more than 4 times a month from a savings account, in other words, the account is called a savings account. If you withdraw from that account more than 4 times, the bank is not going to pay you any interest. Because as far as they are concerned, you've called it a savings account, but in reality, you are operating the account like a current account. So typically, they will not pay you any interest if you withdraw more than. So think of it, most people use their savings account like a current account. You won't earn any interest on that because what you're doing is you're not treating like this. A savings account is an account that you're not supposed to. It's a savings. You're meant to just save money there, not take the money out. So what typically you find is that if you don't withdraw from the bank, from the account, then of course you earn it. But if you withdraw from it, then of course more than 4 times a month, most banks typically won't pay you any interest on that. So what I always advise is for most people is that if you want to save as a savings account, then have an account that you do not actually go and touch money and pay. For those accounts, you check it. If you don't withdraw from it, the bank will pay you interest every month. They actually do. So you get the alerts and every month. They created your account with interest. But typically, once you withdrawing from those accounts more than 4 times a month, typically they won't pay you because although you call it a savings account, it's not a savings account. It's more like a current account. But the current accounts don't earn interest because by nature, the accounts that people use for regular transaction, money comes in and goes out frequently. So I hope that answers the question on that. But if you want to do that, then just have an account that is separate. You don't regularly use for your ongoing day-to-day regular payments out of it. Then next question is, what happens if the government defaults on interest? In Nigeria, we've not had any issue of defaults. And typically what you find is that most governments in the currency which they print, in which they have fiat over, it's difficult for them to default on those. Although Ghana did that differently, but in most countries where the government typically would always repay their own currency obligations. That's within their own currency, they always be able to pay because they can always borrow and pay. Borrow and pay. So that ability to borrow and pay means that risk is very low. But of course, the government defaults, depending on how it is, they will go to court and it could be legally challenged. But in Nigeria, like I said, historically, the federal government, that's the federal government in particular, will not have an answer with the federal government in particular because as long as the government is easily able to access borrowings from the capital markets, they can always use those borrowings to repay whatever maturities exist. And of course, don't forget, the government can also borrow money from the central bank through the ways and means and to always ensure they don't default on their obligations. So that's one way to sort of think of it. In Naira, it will be difficult for the government to default because it's a currency that they have fiat over. And the third question is, are BAs seen as money market? Yeah, BAs are bankers students are money market instruments, just that they are not very popular again. They're not seen as popular because the costs associated with it, I think, usually punitive because you are essentially asking the bank to underwrite them, whereas the bank would also provide you that facility as well. So you usually don't find them. It's not something that you see a lot of popularly. At least the ones that are structured legally as a BA, they are still there, but it's just that I think the way things are between lending money from the bank, issuing commercial papers, those other things, but they still exist. It's just that it's not something that the public typically accepts. But I think within the structure of things, it's just not something that is popular anymore. Mutual fund recommendation, it's difficult for me to specifically give a recommendation for a mutual fund. But if you come to me personally, I could talk about this on a public forum. You didn't expect me to say, I'll tell you that go and use your money here because it's not so. What I would say is that all mutual funds in Nigeria are regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission. So they are all registered by it, and you can see their details on the SEC website. If you go to the SEC website, you check the net asset value, you can see all mutual funds on the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission. You can see the amount of money they have, you can see their yield. And typically, most money market funds are required to be rated, so most of them are rated. And also, the money market funds typically use a custodian. So in other words, the assets are typically warehoused with a custodian separate from the manager. So that means that to a large extent, even if the manager goes down, the assets are safe because they are typically with a third-party custodian. So that means that money market instruments are relatively safer. That's what I would say. What I would say is, what is financial advisor or stockbroker, they can recommend for you directly. And typically, like I said, if you look at the SEC website, you can see the various money market fund managers. You can see the yield at which they are offering. You can also find information about their structure, their custodians. If you speak to your financial advisor, the guy provide you a lot more information and detail. Money market funds are regulated. Like I said, they use a custodian. So to a large extent, they are relatively safe because they use a custodian, it means that even if the fund manager has issues, the monies are isolated from the fund manager. So it kind of works. The minimum amount for treasury bills is 50 million. However, what does the minimum amount? However, what some people can do is, particularly if you go with some banks, if you're going for the auction, it's 50 million there. However, if you are buying from the secondary market, in other words, some banks may sell to you from their own books. Let's say they will sell from their own, they can sell to you for an amount less than that. That's because it's a one-to-one link. That's if you're their customer in particular. They will typically can sell to you. If they see you have money, they can sell to you from their own book. But to go for the auction, the required amount is a minimum of 50 million if you're that's the required amount. But sometimes banks will sell to you on a secondary market on their own positions, but the price you will get is not the same price you get about the auction price. That's just that's the difference. I think that's all. The question of cryptocurrency. I'm not sure. I think the problem with cryptocurrency is that until it becomes formally adopted in Nigeria, it will be difficult for anyone to recommend the asset class, just given the way it is. Because I mean, although I heard SEC recently is looking to register and license some cryptocurrency exchanges, but like I said, until you have full formal regulatory adoption by the Nigerian SEC, the central bank, and government authorities in general, it will be difficult for cryptocurrency because one day something it may look as if it's adopted, and then the next day it looks as if government regulation is against it as well. So until you get clear regulatory clarity on cryptocurrencies within Nigeria, I think it's going to be very challenging as a class to recommend because it involves risk that tomorrow the government may not like. May not like that, but may not like that cryptocurrency, and then you see a clamp down on it. So my sense is in general, until you get full formal adoption from SEC, CBN, and tax authorities and everything, it will be difficult to recommend cryptocurrency for organizations, particularly organizations that are registered and public, and these organizations have regulators and things like that. So the asset class is not adopted formally. To do all to expect organizations to make those investments. So, someone is asking what the current TV rate is. The current last TV auction was issued at a discount of I think 20%. So the yield is anywhere between 23-24%. So yeah, that's very low. But it occurs every fortnight, every 2 weeks. Central bank issues a NTB. They sell NTB at fortnightly auction. So, but if you had it for all banks in general, if you reach out to your account officer, you request you want to buy treasury bills, they will typically respond to you. So just reach out to your account officer via email most times. You know your account officer, send them an email, and they will inform you about the steps you take to make treasury bill investments. Okay. You just send an email to your account officer, they will tell you what the rate is, what you need to do, the steps you need to take, and how they will then make the investment on your behalf.
Okay, thank you very much for painstakingly running through all the questions. I think that's all the questions we can take for this session. If any of you still have other area of clarification, I'm sure Mr. Okunriboye's contact will be in his slides. And if you get it and you don't have it, feel free to reach out to us in ICAN Amuwo. We will help, cascade your questions to him, and once we hear from him, we will get the response, the detailed response back to you. So at this point, we will now call on the district vice chairman and the person of Alhaji Hassan to help appreciate our speakers. Over to you, our vice chairman. Okay, I guess he's not on the call. Okay, let me call on the technical secretary, who, while providing additional district activities, can appreciate our facilitators on behalf of the vice chairman. The technical secretary. You can unmute your mic, Mr. Alhaji Balogun.
Okay. Amuwo, vanguard of integrity. I appreciate everybody, more especially our fans. We thank you all for participating in our program for today. Likewise, we appreciate our facilitators The two facilitators, out of no time, they created this time for us to join us. So we thank you all for giving us your crucial time to attend to us. Secondly, we use your body to inform everybody that every month, by last Saturday of every month, we are going to come with a new topic for you with a sound and renowned members to give you a sound lecture. Subsequently, in every place, I want all our participants to note this in their diary. Every last Saturday of every month, rest assure you, we are going to give you every new topics. Also, for those non-member of Amuwo, you can still join us. You can still join our district. Our district is open for everybody. Either you're in Lagos, you're not in Lagos. We're always on virtual and we're always on hybrid, virtual and physical. So you can join us. Every meeting, we have our technical system, more or less like this. So please join us. Immediately during the week, your 5 MCB units is reassured for you. We are going to request for your credit, 5 units. So, and we are sorry for anybody that have gone through 1 or 2 things before getting to the link. And I'm sure you that everybody that register, your attendance has been taken, and we are going to send the video of the program to you, everybody. If you need any slides, anytime, call on us. You can see that throughout the day, overnight, we attend to all any apps or assistance you have required for us. So we thank you once again for joining our district program. Thank you. You can still join us. Reach out to me or any member of the team. And I thank my chairman and every technical committee for joining on together to come up with this kind of program. We appreciate you. Thank you all, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, our technical secretary. With that vote of thanks and district information, disseminated to us, we'll be bringing the August webinar to a close. I think the chairman would like to have some parting words. Over to you, chairman.
Thank you so much once again, Mr. Michael Alatishe, FCA. And what I just want to say is a big thank you to our facilitators for making out the time to be here today. And thanking them both, but also now thanking Mr. Wale Okunriboye especially for doing this pro bono. We appreciate you, sir. More of you contributing to our district and impacting our members. And we all know that we all continue to meet on higher grounds and higher levels. So thank you both, and do enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you, sirs.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. And on that thankful note, we would like to bring this webinar to a close. So at least we have enough time to attend to all other activities lined up for the day. So in order to close out, we will be going through the closing prayer, which is the second stanza of our old national anthem. O God of creation, direct our noble course, guide our leaders right, help our youth the truth to know, in love and honesty to grow, and living just and true, lofty heights attain, to build a nation where peace and justice shall reign. So we'll now go on to ICAN anthem.
Let's go, I can find Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. Noble ICAN, your accuracy we cherish. We uphold your integrity.
Yeah, moving over to the national anthem. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Apologies, I think I still have issues with my audio relating to the anthems. Apologies, I think the system messed us up. This will not repeat itself. I apologize on behalf of the district. So this is now, bringing this session to an end. Be rest assured that all registered participants would get the slides through the email communication where the links were sent to you. You will get the recording, and your MCPD creditors will be credited to your account before the end of the new week, which is the new month. I'm wishing us all the best of the rest of the day. Goodbye from me. Goodbye all.
Thank you so much, Mr. Michael Artish, FCA. We sincerely, deeply appreciate you. From all of us at ICAN Amuwo and District Society, we say thank you. And thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Have a wonderful month of September ahead. And see you in September. Up ICAN Amuwo, Vanguard of Integrity.
Thank you.